What's up, guys? It's Lord Both here for another video, and F1 has passed $500 million at the box office. That's right, this coming to us from Discussing Film via Twitter X states Joseph Kosinski's F1 has passed $500 million worldwide. It is now one of the highest grossing original films of the past decade, which that sounds awesome, right? And the fact that this is a streaming movie made by Apple as pretty much just a way to sell the fact that they're going to be having F1 on Apple TV makes it seem like this movie is a roaring success. The only problem is, according to its reported budget, probably not. Now I want to preface all this by saying that I've seen F1. I thought it was a great movie. Probably the best movie we're going to get this entire year. It definitely had that Top Gun Maverick vibe, and it's one of the few movies in a very, very long time, like Top Gun Maverick, that made me invested in the characters, in the story, and kept me on the edge of the seat as I didn't know what was going to happen next. I think it's an excellent movie. I think you should go see it, because this thing is so good it deserves to be profitable. The only problem is there are a lot of things that deserve success, and it's not always guaranteed. And it doesn't look like this thing is gonna see success, at least financially, because the reported budget on this movie is somewhere between $200 to $300 million. And if we take the normal sort of circumstances that we take with any kind of movie, and we attribute them to this film, which we have to times the budget by 3. So let's say that the production budget was $200 million. $200 million over again because of the marketing is $400 million. Over again, is $600 million. Which this movie might hit $600 million, yes. But there are a lot of people reporting that this thing has to actually hit $700, $750 to break even. And if it had that $300 million budget as claimed by some, well, then you're looking at $900 million to break even. And it's pretty, within the realm to understand why this movie costs that much. Building actual F1 race cars, working within the confines of actual races, paying Brad Pitt the reported $20 to $30 million for his role in this movie alone. It can be very easy, especially with all the special effects that were done very, very well in this movie, but it's easy to see how the budget ballooned quite heavily. And $200 million is not something I would think is ridiculous, at least in this day and age, for a movie like this. Superman's reported budget is about $225 million. And I would say that this movie was probably about $25 to $30 million less in terms of work than, say, something like Superman, which I'd say a little something about Superman more than this movie, or just budgets about movies in general. But yeah, I'm pretty certain the budget that they're saying makes sense, at least for this day and age, even though none of that makes sense, because it feels like you should be able to do it for cheaper. But the weird part has been a lot of people have taken this $500 million milestone as opposed to its purported budget, and they've acted like it's some sort of weird win. One of these people is actually Valiant Renegade, who is known as a movies numbers guy, right? And I think has done very good, accurate reporting when it comes to movies and the numbers. I think there might be some bias here when it comes to his reaction to the $500 million milestone for F1 and just the reporting on this in general by him. Which, if you have bias because you like something more, that's fine. But you gotta be upfront and open about your bias. And especially if you're a numbers guy, right? Not only should you be open and upfront about your bias, you should at least try very, very hard not to have any bias whatsoever. I give this full lead-in because this was a conversation that I had with Valiant Renegade via Twitter X when it came to his post, which stated, "Best movie of the summer, perhaps the year." I don't disagree with him there. Crosses $500 million this weekend. Crosses $500 million this weekend. This is a hell of a win and a first for a production financed by a streaming service. Apple TV and domestic and UK distribution partner Warner Brothers have got to be elated. Now, I thought this post was kind of weird because I thought of anybody Valiant Renegade would know the reported budget for F1. See this kind of posts from things like Discussing Film and reports that the movie had crossed $500 million or was going to cross $500 million. I don't think it's actually gotten there yet, at least at the making of this video. And he would say, well, actually the reported budget is this, so it's going to be very hard for this movie to actually get profitable, which is a shame because it's a really good movie and etc, etc. But no, he's actually gassing it up as a major win. So, because I can't help myself, I stated $200 to $300 million production budget. Despite the fact that this is by far the best movie of the year in my opinion, it is still wildly missing profitability, so I don't know why you're calling it a win if you're the numbers guy. He responds by saying, no, $140 to $150 million, which I gotta be honest with you, I have no idea where he got that number from. I have not seen that number reported in any articles or anywhere. So unless he has some kind of insider source, I'm not sure. I think maybe he showed an article later where it states that it's maybe around there. I don't know. I have to take a second look here. Nope, I took a second look again. It's not there. He also stated in this reply that what Apple paid to own it in perpetuity is not what the production costs, which I think they paid I think he's talking about the rights to not the movie but Formula One or something like that. I honestly don't know what he's talking about here. In either case, whether it's to own the movie in perpetuity or have the rights to F1 in perpetuity or at least have a contract, it's like, okay, that's not really, I wasn't counting that. So I don't really know what we're talking about here. But I responded to his claim that the movie cost only $140 to $150 million to make by saying, this is one of 12 articles from every array of publications. And I say that because I don't want him to think that I'm taking some liberal source or some Hollywood hit job that doesn't like independent movies or whatever. Because let's be honest here. Valiant Renegade, clearly a conservative guy, doesn't trust liberal Hollywood, doesn't trust their numbers, doesn't trust what their publications say about numbers, does his own research and actually presents his own information. And that's kind of what, we like about him, right? But that said, literally every source, including IMDb, is stating that this movie was $200 to $300 million. But as I was saying, literally haven't seen a single report that has said this movie doesn't have to generate around $600+ million to break even, with several going over $750. The only things I've seen even disputing the $300 million budget is Jerry Bruckheimer basically saying, nah, it wasn't that much, which we're actually going to get into that in a minute because he publishes that in a screenshot he has. And I also state, Pitt alone was paid $30 million for the role. And if you go see the movie and you know that Brad Pitt was paid $20 to $30 million for the role, and you know what modern spectacle movies cost, there's no way that you can look at F1 and think, oh, they spent $110, $120 million on that. It just, from a visual standpoint and knowing the numbers, it doesn't make sense. But I made this reply with the actual screenshot from IMDb of the article that states Brad Pitt's Formula One movie's biggest obstacle isn't its $300 million budget. The point is that this is IMDb literally saying the movie is $300 million. He simply responds by saying $200 million would have been a very high top end. He then posts a screenshot of an article saying it's completely unfortunate, tens of millions of dollars out of whack, in the wrong direction and in the right direction for us. That's from Jerry Bruckheimer in the article, a quote from him. Basically saying that people have gotten the budget wrong and that tens of millions of dollars are wrong. If you're going to say a movie is tens of millions of dollars wrong in the budget, but people are still estimating that the budget is somewhere between $200 and $300 million, that still doesn't make a big enough of a dent to be like, oh, it's definitely 140, 150. Bruckheimer continues, what people don't realize, first of all, we're shooting in rebate locations. England has a big rebate. Lots of Europe has rebates. So does Abu Dhabi. It all lowers the budget. Plus, we've raised more money for our car through sponsorship and some F1 teams. Okay, but one, how much money? Like, he basically says here he can't say the actual budget of the film because that's Apple's number, but he can't give us the number for the sponsorships he got to help pay for the movie or pay for the car. And the rebates, yeah, he probably got rebates for those locations. You know who also gets rebates? Disney Marvel, because they shoot in those locations too. Guess what? Disney Marvel, always over budget, despite the fact that they get rebates. Barely have broken even since Endgame in most of their movies, with budgets similar to this. Even in that article that he shared a screenshot of, it states, now it would be silly to assume F1 would have a budget under $100 million. It's just not that type of film. Judging by the teaser, it's clear why this is an expensive film. Yes, everybody can see it, exactly. In fact, when Bruckheimer said tens of millions, you probably assume the film costs around $200 million. That's still an absolutely massive number, but not nearly as crazy as $300 million. Yeah, but still, at $200 million, it's struggling to break even. And it may break even still at that $200 million mark. But this thing is not profitable and not a win. So I don't know why Valiant Renegade is calling it a win. It's simply not, if you go by the numbers that are reported. And he said that this is a very high-end number. But from the screenshot of the article he posted to show support for his argument, that's not what I get from this at all. It seems like that's on par with what the film might actually cost. And here's where we get to the crux of the problem with all this. When I responded thusly, okay, but Disney, especially Marvel, claim this kind of thing all the time, and they're either wildly wrong or straight up lying. And Warner Brothers, which I think is the distributor, right, which Warner Brothers was involved, as you can see from earlier in this video, they do that too. So I guess what I've really been trying to ask this whole time is, why are we giving the benefit of the doubt to these guys when other guys in their business and companies involved in this have lied to us before? Because Warner Brothers has definitely done the whole underreported their budget thing before, right? Just like Disney, Marvel, and etc. Is their word that much better that we should lower all our threshold numbers to the bottom when they say they were cut a sweet deal? As opposed to Disney, who say they were cut a sweet deal and we're like, nah, I don't believe you, and add 1.5 times to all their numbers. See, that's really the problem I have here with Valiant Renegade calling this a win, or any numbers guy calling this a win. Because going by their typical formula, it isn't a win. And what they're trying to do is justify calling this a win by saying, oh, well, the production guys, the producers, and everybody else around this film said, the numbers they're not right. They're actually tens of millions of dollars less. They're way out of whack with this movie. But Disney and Warner Brothers have done that same exact thing in the past, or just straight up underreported their budgets, basically doing it without coming out and saying it, and they're being hailed as massive failures and liars, and their movies took losses and were unprofitable and etc., which they were. But if you're going to say that those were losses, you gotta say that this is a loss too. We can't believe one set of producers and what they say and change all the number thresholds just because we like them and we like the movie, so we'll believe what they say. And in the same breath, guys that we don't like, didn't like their movies, and let's be real honest, don't like their politics and what they believe and what they've done agenda-wise in some of their content, discount what they say about their budgets or how they report their budgets, and apply a whole different set of number thresholds for them. The point here is that we have to be objective and go by the numbers that are reported. These are the numbers that are reported. And if they were so egregious and so wrong, don't you think Apple themselves would come out and hint at least what the actual budget was? Or hell, just put the number out in total? I know they probably don't know the exact number of all their rebates yet or whatever, but at least give us a rough estimate if these numbers are so totally wrong. They haven't done that yet, which kind of tells me that these numbers might be pretty true. I don't know, man. I just want fair reporting. I want fair and accurate reporting that's based upon the numbers. And when you claim to be a numbers guy, and then you let what people actually in the industry that have worked on the project say about the reported numbers affect how you think about the reported numbers, at least for some people, and then for other sets of people, you don't, well, that's bias. And again, it's okay to have bias, as long as you're upfront about it and you don't claim to purely be a numbers guy. But if you do, then you're being a little disingenuous. Yeah. Listen, I still like Valiant Renegade. I think he makes great content. I like the fact that he focuses on the actual numbers, which should be the W's and the L's of the business. But I don't like the fact that he's letting this bias sort of creep in and affect how he presents things. But hey, those are just my thoughts on all this. If you have your own thoughts, go and leave them in the comments. If you liked this video, go and like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like this video, appreciate you watching all of it, and we'll talk to you again later.